Welcome to the Formula Bone F1 Show's 2022 United States Grand Prix preview. I'm Jared Borislow, but you can call me J-Bone. Let's get into it, folks. J-Bone! Our first order of business today is getting to know the United States Grand Prix and its Circuit of the Americas, which, by the way, I will be at all race weekend long, so be sure to follow me everywhere on social media at Formula Bone so you can get updates before, during, and after the race. J-Bone! The United States Grand Prix was first run as a Formula One World Championship event all the way back in 1959, when McLaren founder Bruce McLaren won the 1959 United States Grand Prix held at Sebring International Raceway in Florida. The Sebring International Raceway was the first of many American circuits to host a Formula One United States Grand Prix, with the others being Riverside International Raceway in California, Watkins Glen in New York, Phoenix Street Circuit in Arizona, Indianapolis Motor Speedway in Indiana, and Circuit of the Americas, aka COTA, in Texas, with COTA actually celebrating its 10-year anniversary this weekend of hosting F1 events. And while those are the 6 American circuits that have hosted Formula One United States Grand Prix, 7 American circuits have hosted or will be hosting Formula One races not named the United States Grand Prix. There is the Caesars Palace Grand Prix circuit in Las Vegas, which hosted both runnings of the Formula One Caesars Palace Grand Prix from 1981 to 1982, Dallas Fair Park in Texas, which hosted the only ever running of the Formula One Dallas Grand Prix in 1984. That event was something else. Nigel Mansell passed out because it was so hot. There's the Detroit Street Circuit in Michigan, which hosted all 7 runnings of the Formula One Detroit Grand Prix from 1982 to 1988. The Long Beach Street Circuit in California, which played host to the Formula One United States Grand Prix West from 1976 to 1983, the United States Grand Prix West was, in fact, a different event than the United States Grand Prix, despite the name's similarity, right? They actually used to call the regular United States Grand Prix the United States Grand Prix East when there was a United States Grand Prix West, despite the fact that the United States Grand Prix East was the quote-unquote real United States Grand Prix. Very weird. Now, what's also interesting there is that there were 3 Formula One seasons, the 1981, 1982, and 1983 seasons, which featured a United States Grand Prix West, but no regular United States Grand Prix. All 3 of those seasons contained either 2 or 3 American F1 races, none of which were named the United States Grand Prix. Kind of bizarre. Moving on, there's also the Miami International Autodrome in Florida, which plays host to the Miami Grand Prix as of earlier this year. There's the Las Vegas Street Circuit in Nevada, which will be hosting next year's inaugural Las Vegas Grand Prix. And technically, and I love this little fact, there's also Indianapolis Motor Speedway, again, which hosted the Indy 500 from 1950 to 1960, back when it was included on the Formula One calendar. And if you're wondering, yes, the United States contains more unique past and present Formula One Grand Prix circuits than any other country in the world, with 12. I hope you all enjoyed that USGP history lesson. Now, here's another one. You all know I love my F1 history, and with this being my home Grand Prix, I had to make it a little bit more history focused. Speaking of which, the 2005 Formula One United States Grand Prix was an absolute mess. Held at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, 20 cars entered the race, but only 6 actually started it. This is because the 7 teams that used Michelin tires were rendered unable to competitively race due to tire reliability issues, so they all withdrew at the end of the formation lap. During the race weekend, Michelin told the teams that used their tires that unless they slowed down on one part of the track all race, their tires would only last 10 of the race's 73 laps. Now, this is an even bigger problem than it already sounds like when you consider the fact that back in 2005, you weren't allowed to change your tires at all mid-race. Yes, you heard that correctly. You could not pit for new tires at all back in 2005. You could refuel, though, which is funny because now the rule is the exact opposite, where you can't refuel, but you can pit for new tires. Kind of funny how Formula One's rules have changed. If you were wondering, the 6 cars that did compete in the 2005 Formula One United States Grand Prix were all using Bridgestone tires, not Michelin, and the Bridgestones did not have the same issues. And by the way, if you couldn't tell, this is back before Pirelli was the sole tire supplier to the entire grid, and teams had a choice of tire supplier. For this season, it was just Michelin or Bridgestone. Ferrari, in this race, coasted to an easy 1-2 finish after both of their cars lapped the entire rest of this tiny field, with Michael Schumacher winning the race and Rubens Barrichello coming in second. Now, I love this part of the story. Third place went to Jordan Toyota driver Tiago Monteiro of Portugal. This would be the only podium of Tiago Monteiro's career and the first of his 2 ever F1 points finishes. To this day, Tiago Monteiro's P3 at the 2005 United States Grand Prix remains the only ever F1 podium finish achieved by a driver from Portugal. Now, sadly, Tiago Monteiro had to celebrate the best moment of his F1 career and possibly his life alone on the podium as the 2 Ferrari drivers quickly exited the stage after awards were handed out due to the bizarre circumstances with which the race was ran and the incessant booing coming from the crowd. Though I should note that you can hear some cheering for Tiago Monteiro amongst all the boos if you go back and watch that bizarre podium celebration. Let's move on to discussing the circuit itself. Circuit of the Americas, aka COTA, is 5.513 kilometers or 3.43 miles in length, and the United States Grand Prix will be contested over the course of 56 laps around its 20 turns. The most iconic turn at COTA is undoubtedly Turn 1, nicknamed Big Red, though nobody ever calls it that. The approach to Turn 1 is wildly steep, with drivers ascending over 100 feet or over 30 meters in a matter of seconds as they go from the start-finish line to Turn 1's apex. It's one of the steepest climbs on the entire F1 calendar, and pictures and videos just do not do it justice. When you see it in person, it is a freaking crazy sight. You're like, oh my gosh, how are these cars going to make it up that hill? Now, maybe I only say that because I'm thinking about my car, my 2008 Nissan Sentra, which can't make it up many hills. Not a good car, folks. Not a good car. One section that's going to look very familiar to you if you watched the Japanese Grand Prix is Turn 3 through Turn 6, which was partially inspired by Suzuka's Turn 3 through Turn 6 section called the S's that is very wiggly and downforcey and fun to watch cars drive through. This section and the one at Suzuka were both originally inspired by Maggott's Beckett's Chapel at Silverstone. Furthermore, COTA's back straight is one of the longest straights on the F1 calendar at 1,100 meters or 0.68 miles in length, and the turn at the end of it, Turn 12, is COTA's main overtaking zone. Now, one complaint that F1 drivers and MotoGP riders have had about COTA over the years is that it's too bumpy in some areas, with the MotoGP riders being the main plaintiffs, as bumps obviously affect motorcycles more than cars. Because of this, COTA was resurfaced earlier this year before MotoGP came to town, and while the resurfacing didn't get rave reviews from riders, they did say it was an improvement, so that's at least something the F1 drivers can look forward to, I guess, kind of. COTA's most iconic piece of architecture is the COTA Tower, which looks at first glance like the world's scariest slide, but is actually just an observation tower with some fancy tube decorations that lead from the top of it down to the circuit's amphitheater, which hosts concerts throughout the rest of the year. The COTA Tower is 251 feet or over 76 meters tall because everything's bigger in Texas, and you can actually buy a ticket to go all the way to the top and check out the insane view if you aren't scared of heights. Though I will warn you that you do have to walk all the way down by yourself, which is an absolute trek. So keep that in mind. You're allowed to take an elevator up, but they make you walk down. No one has a business like yours with all its strengths and challenges. To succeed, you need a hiring partner that adapts to your needs. You need this episode's sponsor, Indeed. Indeed is the hiring platform where you can attract, interview, and hire all in one place. Instead of spending hours on multiple job sites searching for candidates with the right skills, Indeed's a powerful hiring partner that can help you do it all. Find great talent faster through time-saving tools like Indeed Instant Match, assessments, and virtual interviews. With Instant Match, over 80% of employers get quality candidates whose resume on Indeed matches their job description the moment they sponsor a job, according to Indeed Data US. One of the things I love about Indeed, and one of the reasons we'll be using it for our next hire here at Bolen Media, is that it makes hiring all in one place so easy because they have such an amazing talent pool. In fact, 3 out of 4 U.S. online job seekers search for jobs on Indeed each month, according to ComScore. Start hiring now with a $75 sponsored job credit to upgrade your job post at Indeed.com/FBone. Offer good for a limited time. So claim your $75 credit now at Indeed.com/FBONE, Indeed.com/FBone. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. There's a link for that deal in the description of this episode. For tire compounds at the 2022 United States Grand Prix, Pirelli have opted for the neutral compound range, the C2 hards, C3 mediums, and C4 softs. Pirelli Motorsport Director Mario Isola had this to say about their choice. Quote, "The Circuit of the Americas is a balanced layout when it comes to the demands placed on cars and tires in terms of traction, braking, and lateral loads, but it's mainly a flowing track that the drivers love, which nonetheless presents some challenging sections that shouldn't be underestimated. The track was partially re-asphalted in 2020, with a milling process also taking place last year to shave off the worst of the bumps that oblige teams to raise the ride height, which affects aerodynamics. In the first free practice session, there could be a high degree of track evolution, so it's going to be vital for the teams to maximize the data collected during FP3 to define the best strategy. The second free practice session will be dedicated to slick tire testing for 2023, weather permitting. Weather conditions in Austin have been extremely variable in the past, so it's a circuit where you have to be ready for anything." End quote. Next up, here is why you should still care about and watch the 2022 United States Grand Prix, even though Max Verstappen has already clinched this season's World Drivers' Championship. First, Red Bull are trying to clinch the 2022 World Constructors' Championship this weekend in Austin, Texas. If Red Bull can pull this off, they'll be the first team not named Mercedes to win the Constructors since 2013, as Mercedes have won an insane 8 World Constructors' Championships in a row. And Red Bull have a very good chance of pulling this off, as all Max and Checo need to do at the USGP to lock up the 2022 World Constructors' Championship for Red Bull is either combine to score 26 points and or not let Ferrari outscore them by 19 points. Second, Checo Perez and Charles Leclerc are still battling hard for P2 in the World Drivers' Championship. Just one lone point separates these two drivers at the moment, with Checo having the slight edge of 1 point after Leclerc's post-race penalty in Japan. If Checo can hold off Leclerc through the end of the season, it will be Red Bull's first ever 1-2 finish in the World Drivers' Championship, and if Leclerc ends up pulling it off, it will be Ferrari's best World Drivers' Championship finish since Sebastian Vettel's P2 in 2018. Leclerc is coming off back-to-back-to-back podiums, and Checo is coming off back-to-back podiums, with one of those being a victory, so this should be an incredible battle that hopefully comes down to Abu Dhabi. Third, Max Verstappen is still chasing history. His bid for the longest winning streak in F1 history ended in Singapore, but Max is still able to set a new record for the most wins in a single Formula One season if he wins 2 of the remaining 4 races. And lastly, you should still care about and watch the United States Grand Prix because I, J-Bone, will be there all race weekend long making content for you guys. J-Bone! Next up, here are my 3 bona fide race predictions for the 2022 United States Grand Prix. that I'm about to go 3 for 3 on, okay? This is my home Grand Prix. I got this. Bona-fide prediction number 1. Both Red Bulls will finish on the podium at the USGP as Red Bull clinch the World Constructors' Championship. COTA suits the Red Bull car well with its 2 long straights, and you've also just got to ride the hot hands right now, as the Red Bull cars and drivers are both just a step above the field at the moment, with Leclerc and his Ferrari looking to be their only real competition. Bona-fide prediction number 2. Daniel Ricciardo will finish in the points at the United States Grand Prix. Everyone knows how much Cowboy Danny Rick loves racing in Texas, and seeing as this may potentially be his last time racing in Formula One at COTA, I think he'll be extra motivated to put up a good result in front of what's kind of like an additional home race for him, because there are so many Daniel Ricciardo fans here in the United States. And bona-fide prediction number 3, neither Haas car will finish in the points at their home Grand Prix. I'm once again doing the honorable thing and sacrificing one of my predictions in an attempt to reverse jinx Haas into the points. Because if there's any race at which I should go ahead and do that, it's got to be Haas's home Grand Prix, right? So I really hope I get this one wrong so that the Steiner ship may grow larger here in the US of A. Those were J-Bone's bona-fide race predictions. Now, I want to hear your bona-fide race predictions. Let me see them in the YouTube comment section of this episode. Speaking of YouTube, I'm also trying to get 1,500 likes on this video episode. If you can do J-Bone a solid and toss this video a like. J-Bone! Next up, I'm going to now give my bona-fide pre-race weekend predictions for the top 5 finishers in Sunday's United States Grand Prix with zero reasoning nor explanation. P5, George Russell. P4, Carlos Sainz. P3, Charles Leclerc. P2, Checo Perez. And P1, Max Verstappen. That's it for today's episode of the Formula Bone F1 show. If you enjoyed the show and are able to, I'd really appreciate it if you bought a piece of Formula Bone merch available now on bolenmedia.com/shop. I've placed a link to the fully revamped Formula Bone shop in the description of this episode. For Formula One updates between now and my United States Grand Prix recap episode, follow me on social media everywhere at Formula Bone, as I will be at the USGP all race weekend long, making content for you guys. You can also join over 800 members of the Bone Brigade in the Formula Bone Discord server via the invite link in the description of this episode, and you can also follow my personal social media accounts at my real name, Jared Borislow. That is at JaredBorislow. Until next time, folks, J-Bone!